Question 123. Dash is a cloud-based platform for creating and running automated workflows that integrate your apps, data, services, and systems. Option A, Azure DevOps. Option B, Azure Logic Apps. Option C, Azure Events Hub. Option D, Azure App Service. And the correct answer is option B, Azure Logic Apps. Explanation. Azure Logic Apps is a cloud service that helps you schedule, automate, and orchestrate tasks, business processes, and workflows when you need to integrate apps, data, systems, and services across enterprises or organizations. Next question. The Azure Question Answer Forums is a paid service. Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. The Question Answer Forums is a free service offered by Azure. There is no cost associated with it. You can get answers to common questions and even filter by product to limit the results. Next question. Having a hybrid cloud solution in place could be useful when regulations or policies do not permit moving specific data or workloads to the cloud. Option A, no. Option B, yes. And the correct answer is option B, yes. Explanation. From the official Azure documentation. When organizations move workloads and data to the cloud, their on-premises data centers often continue to play an important role. The term hybrid cloud refers to a combination of public cloud and on-premises data centers to create an integrated IT environment that spans both. Some organizations use hybrid cloud as a path to migrate their entire data center to the cloud over time. Other organizations use cloud services to extend their existing on-premises infrastructure. When to use a hybrid solution? Consider using a hybrid solution in the following scenarios. Number 1. As a transition strategy during a longer-term migration to a fully cloud-native solution. Number 2. When regulations or policies do not permit moving specific data or workloads to the cloud. Number 3. For disaster recovery and fault tolerance by replicating data and services between on-premises and cloud environments. Number 4. To reduce latency between your on-premises data center and remote locations by hosting part of your architecture in Azure. Next question. Which of the following enables centralizing your organization's file shares in Azure Files while keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of a Windows file server? Option A, Azure File Explorer. Option B, Azure File Sync. Option C, Azure File Storage. Option D, Azure File Manager. And the correct answer is option B, Azure File Sync. Explanation. From the official Azure documentation. Azure File Sync enables centralizing your organization's file shares in Azure Files while keeping the flexibility, performance, and compatibility of a Windows file server, while some users may opt to keep a full copy of their data locally. Azure File Sync additionally has the ability to transform Windows Server into a quick cache of your Azure file share. You can use any protocol that's available on Windows Server to access your data locally, including SMB, NFS, and FTPS. You can have as many caches as you need across the world. Next question. Which Azure service should you use to correlate events from multiple resources into a centralized repository? Option A, Azure Blueprint. Option B, Azure Event Hubs. Option C, Azure Log Analytics. Option D, Azure Cosmos DB. And the correct answer is option B, Azure Event Hubs. Explanation. From the official documentation, Event Hubs is a fully managed real-time data ingestion service that's simple, trusted, and scalable. It streams millions of events per second from any source to build dynamic data pipelines and immediately respond to business challenges. Keep processing data during emergencies using the geo disaster recovery and geo replication features. integrate seamlessly with other Azure services to unlock valuable insights, allow existing Apache Kafka clients and applications to talk to event hubs without any code changes. You get a managed Kafka experience without having to manage your own clusters. Experience real-time data ingestion and micro-batching on the same stream. Next question. Dash copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location in the primary region. Option A. Locally redundant storage. Option B. Worldwide redundant storage. Option C. Zone redundant storage. Option D. Geo-zone redundant storage. And the correct answer is option A. Locally redundant storage LRS. Explanation. From the official Azure docs, Azure Storage always stores multiple copies of your data so that it's protected from planned and unplanned events, including transient hardware failures, network or power outages, and massive natural disaster. Redundancy ensures that your storage account meets its availability and durability targets even in the face of failures. Redundancy in the primary region. Data in an Azure storage account is always replicated 3 times in the primary region. Azure Storage offers 2 options for how your data is replicated in the primary region. Locally redundant storage LRS copies your data synchronously 3 times within a single physical location in the primary region. LRS is the least expensive replication option, but isn't recommended for applications requiring high availability or durability. Zone redundant storage ZRS copies your data synchronously across 3 Azure availability zones in the primary region. For applications requiring high availability, Microsoft recommends using ZRS in the primary region and also replicating to a secondary region. Next question. A team in your organization wants to implement a solution involving basic artificial intelligence, but they have basic API and programming knowledge or background to implement this solution. As an experienced Azure architect, which of the following would be your suggestion? Option A. Azure DevOps. Option B. Azure Active Directory. Option C. Azure Cognitive Services. Option D. Azure Machine Learning Studio. And the correct answer is option C. Azure Cognitive Services. Explanation. From the official Azure documentation, Cognitive Services brings AI within reach of every developer and data scientist. With leading models, a variety of use cases can be unlocked. All it takes is an API call to embed the ability to see, hear, speak, search, understand, and accelerate advanced decision-making into your apps. Enable developers and data scientists of all skill levels to easily add AI capabilities to their apps. Next question. You are looking to link resources together in your on-premises environment and within your Azure subscription, but don't want the connection to travel over the internet. Which of the following can you use? Option A. Azure Express Route. Option B. Azure Sentinel. Option C. Azure Point-to-Site VPN. Option D. Azure Bastion. Option E. Azure Site-to-Site VPN. And the correct answer is option A. Azure Express Route. Explanation. From the official Azure documentation, Azure Virtual Networks enable you to link resources together in your on-premises environment and within your Azure subscription. In effect, you can create a network that spans both your local and cloud environments. There are 3 mechanisms for you to achieve this connectivity. Number 1. Point-to-site virtual private networks. The typical approach to a virtual private network connections is from a computer outside your organization back into your corporate network. In this case, the client computer initiates an encrypted VPN connection to connect that computer to the Azure virtual network. Number 2. Site-to-site virtual private networks. A site-to-site VPN links your on-premises VPN device or gateway to the Azure VPN gateway in a virtual network. In effect, the devices in Azure can appear as being on the local network. The connection is encrypted and works over the internet. Number 3. Azure Express Route for environments where you need greater bandwidth and even higher levels of security. Azure Express Route is the best approach. ExpressRoute provides a dedicated private connectivity to Azure that doesn't travel over the internet. Next question. An Azure Firewall has the ability to encrypt data at rest as well as in transit. Option A, yes. Option B, no. And the correct answer is option B, no. Explanation. A firewall is used to mainly filter the traffic. From the official Azure documentation, Azure Firewall is a managed cloud-based network security service that protects your Azure virtual network resources. It's a fully stateful firewall as a service with built-in high availability and unrestricted cloud scalability. You can centrally create, enforce, and log application and network connectivity policies across subscriptions and virtual networks. Azure Firewall uses a static public IP address for your virtual network, resources allowing outside firewalls to identify traffic originating from your virtual network. The service is fully integrated with Azure Monitor for logging and analytics. To learn about Azure Firewall features, see Azure Firewall features. Next question. After taking a lot of courses and understanding cloud fundamentals, you have realized that migrating your business resources to Azure makes the most sense. Based on your understanding, which of the following would you need to create first? Option A, virtual network. Option B, a resource group. Option C, a subscription. Option D, a resource log. And the correct answer is option C, a subscription. Explanation. A subscription needs to be created first and foremost. The Azure account is what lets you access Azure services and Azure subscriptions. It is possible to create multiple subscriptions in our Azure account to create separation for billing or management purposes. In your subscriptions, you can manage resources in resource group. The Azure hierarchy looks like tenancy, subscription, resource, group, resource. Next question. As the lead security engineer of your organization, you are worried that someone may mistakenly delete mission-critical resources in Azure. What can you do to prevent this from accidentally happening? Option A. Use an Azure Virtual Subnet. Option B. Use Azure Monitor to define policies. Option C. Apply the cannot delete lock on the resources. Option D. Apply the do not touch lock on the resources. Option E. Use Azure ExpressRoute. And the correct answer is option C. Apply the cannot delete lock on the resources. Explanation. Applying a delete lock to the resource group will prevent the resources inside it from being deleted. As an administrator, you can lock a subscription, resource group, or resource to prevent other users in your organization from accidentally deleting or modifying critical resources. The lock overrides any permissions the user might have. You can set the lock level to cannot delete or read only. In the portal, the locks are called delete and read only respectively. Number 1. Cannot delete means authorized users can still read and modify a resource, but they can't delete the resource. Number 2. Read only means authorized users can read a resource, but they can't delete or update the resource. Applying this lock is similar to restricting all authorized users to the permissions granted by the reader role. Next question. You are the lead of a data science team at your organization, and your management wants to utilize cloud capabilities to modernize your work stream. What should the company use to build, test, and deploy predictive analytics solutions? Option A. Azure Batch. Option B. Azure Logic Apps. Option C. Azure Machine Learning Studio. Option D. Azure App Service. And the correct answer is option C. Azure Machine Learning Studio. Explanation. From the official docs, Azure Machine Learning Studio is an enterprise-grade service for the end-to-end machine learning lifecycle. It empowers data scientists and developers to build, deploy, and manage high-quality models faster and with confidence. It accelerates time to value with industry-leading machine learning operations, open source interoperability and integrated tools, innovate on a secure, trusted platform designed for responsible AI applications in machine learning. Next question. It's possible to deploy an Azure VM from a macOS based system by using which of the following options? Option A, Azure Portal. Option B, Azure PowerShell. Option C, Azure Cloud Shell. Option D, Azure CLI. And the correct answer is option A, Azure Portal. Option B, Azure PowerShell. Option C, Azure Cloud Shell. And option D, Azure CLI. Explanation. All of the above can be used to manage Azure resources on a macOS based system. Azure Portal available for all operating systems. Azure CLI available for macOS, Windows and Linux. Azure PowerShell available to install on macOS, Windows, Linux, Docker and ARM. Azure Cloud Shell. Azure Cloud Shell is an interactive, authenticated browser-accessible shell for managing Azure resources. It provides the flexibility of choosing the shell experience that best suits the way you work, either Bash or PowerShell. Next question. Azure strives to ensure a minimum distance of dash miles between data centers in enabled regions, although it isn't possible across all geographies. Option A, 500. Option B, 200. Option C, 300. Option D, 400. And the correct answer is option C, 300. Explanation. From the official Azure docs, Azure strives to ensure a minimum distance of 300 miles, 483 kilometers, between data centers in enabled regions, although it isn't possible across all geographies. Data center separation reduces the likelihood that natural disaster, civil unrest, power outages, or physical network outages can affect multiple regions. Isolation is subject to the constraints within a geography, such as geography size, power or network infrastructure availability and regulations. Next question. You are required to seamlessly connect two virtual networks in Azure without a lot of hassle. Which of the following services would make sense to use? Option A, Virtual Network Peering. Option B, Virtual Network Connector. Option C, Virtual Network Subnets. Option D, Virtual Network Integration Service. And the correct answer is option A, Virtual Network Peering. Explanation. From the official Azure documentation, Virtual Network Peering enables you to seamlessly connect two or more virtual networks in Azure. The virtual networks appear as one for connectivity purposes. The traffic between virtual machines in paired virtual networks uses the Microsoft backbone infrastructure. Like traffic between virtual machines in the same network, traffic is routed through Microsoft's private network only. Azure supports the following types of peering. Number 1. Virtual network peering, connecting virtual networks within the same Azure region. Number 2. Global virtual network peering, connecting virtual networks across Azure regions. Thank you for watching this video. Buy our AZ 900 premium questions with 50% off. Check link in the description.